A teenager helped an elderly man fix his broken car on the side of the road. He didn't accept the money offered, only a thank you. The next day, when he looked out the window, he saw something that made his mother cry with emotion. Corey's sneakers scraped against the pavement as he made his way home. He was used to this route by now, passing the glittering car dealerships along Main Street. The late afternoon sun bounced off the hoods of the expensive cars, giving them a polished glow that felt almost unreal. Corey paused for a moment, his eyes catching on a sleek black Porsche parked in one of the showroom lots. He couldn't help but imagine himself behind the wheel, though he knew it was a silly thought. Still, the idea lingered, a life far removed from the small struggles that filled his days. He moved along, though the fantasy clung to him like a shadow. As he turned a corner, a gruff voice snapped him out of his daydreams. "Hey, keep moving, kid," barked a security guard. Corey blinked and saw the man approaching. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Sorry," Corey mumbled, hurrying his steps. The weight of the man's judgment bore down on him as he walked away. It wasn't the first time he'd felt those eyes on him, the silent assumptions made about who he was or where he belonged. He stuffed his hands deeper into his jacket pockets and focused on getting home. The street shifted as he moved from the dealership-lined stretch to a quieter neighborhood with modest houses. Paint peeled from the edges of windows, and cars with faded finishes sat in driveways. It was a world apart from the shiny perfection he'd just left behind. Finally, he reached his home, a small, weathered place that sat at the edge of the block. It wasn't much, but it was home. Corey pushed open the creaky door, stepping into a cramped living room lined with old family photos. His father's tools hung on the wall near the entryway, a silent reminder of the man Corey had looked up to before the accident took him away. Corey's mom was already sitting at the kitchen table, her hands buried in a stack of bills. When she saw him, she tried to smile, but Corey could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "Hey, sweetheart, how was school?" she asked, her voice light but strained. "It was okay," he replied, opening the fridge even though he knew it was mostly empty. "You doing all right?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Same as always. Nothing we can't handle." But her gaze shifted back to the bills, and Corey could hear the worry in her voice. "The landlord sent another notice. They want rent by the end of the month." Or, she trailed off. But Corey didn't need her to finish. He knew the stakes. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll find something," he said, his voice firm. He didn't have a plan yet, but he couldn't let her carry all of this on her own. She smiled faintly, but Corey could see the doubt in her eyes. He went to his room, the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. Corey's small room was cramped, but he found comfort in the old toolbox that had once belonged to his dad. He ran his fingers over the cool metal, remembering the lessons his dad had taught him about fixing things. "It's not just about the tools," his dad used to say. "It's about understanding how everything works together." Corey opened the box, the creak of the hinges filling the quiet room. Inside were wrenches, screwdrivers, and the small magnifying glass his dad had used for delicate repairs. Corey spent the next hour tinkering with an old bike chain, letting the rhythmic work ease his mind. The next morning, Corey walked to school with a new determination, but as he passed through the quieter streets, he spotted a car pulled over on the curb. The hood was popped open, and steam billowed from beneath it. An older man in a suit stood beside it, his frustration evident. Corey hesitated. He could keep walking. It wasn't his problem. But when the man glanced up and their eyes met, Corey felt a pull. "Hey, need some help?" he called, his voice unsure. The man's skeptical gaze fell on Corey's worn sneakers and old backpack. "You?" he asked, the doubt clear in his tone. Corey nodded. "I know a bit about cars. I could take a look." The man sighed, stepping aside. "Go ahead. Not like I've got better options right now." Corey dropped his bag and peered under the hood. The engine hissed, and the smell of burnt oil filled the air. Corey's eyes scanned the parts until he found a loose hose near the radiator. "Looks like your coolant's leaking," he said. "I can tighten this up, but you should get it checked by a shop soon." The man watched as Corey worked, his expression shifting from doubtful to impressed. When the job was done, The man offered Corey a crisp $50 bill, but Corey shook his head. I don't need money. Just doing the right thing, he said. The man's face softened. In that case, he said, pulling out a business card instead, if you ever need anything, give me a call. I run several dealerships and repair shops. We could use someone like you. Corey took the card, his fingers trembling. Thank you, he said quietly. That night, Corey told his mom about the encounter. She smiled, her eyes glistening with pride. You did a good thing today, Corey. Your dad would be so proud. The next morning, Corey looked out the window and froze. Parked in front of their house was a brand new toolbox with his name on it and a note. For a young mechanic with a bright future. Keep learning. Corey's mom stepped outside, tears streaming down her face as she hugged him tight. It wasn't just the gift, it was the recognition, the hope that things might finally be turning around. Corey held on to that hope, ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed felt surreal to Corey. The new toolbox was a source of constant inspiration. Each evening after school, Corey found himself drawn to it, eager to work on whatever small projects he could scrounge up. Word of his encounter with the man and the mysterious gift spread through the neighborhood. And soon enough, neighbors began approaching Corey with requests to fix their old lawnmowers, bikes, or even the occasional battered generator. Corey took to the tasks with enthusiasm, his confidence growing with each successful repair. One Saturday afternoon, Corey was working on Mrs. Hinson's lawnmower in their driveway when a car pulled up. Corey glanced up to see a familiar face. It was Mr. Carter, the man whose car he'd fixed on the side of the road. Corey, Mr. Carter called, stepping out of the car. I hope I'm not interrupting. I just wanted to see how you're doing. Corey wiped his hands on a rack, trying to hide his surprise. No, not at all. What brings you here? Mr. Carter smiled, his gaze falling on the open toolbox beside Corey. I wanted to thank you again for your help the other day, and to make you an offer. Corey blinked, confused. An offer? Yes, Mr. Carter said, his tone serious. I've been thinking about your talent and how much potential you have. One of my repair shops isn't far from here, and I'd like to give you a part-time job. After school, weekends, whatever works for you. You'll be working with professionals, learning the trade. What do you think? For a moment, Corey was speechless. He'd never imagined an opportunity like this would come his way. He glanced at his mom, who had come outside to see what was happening. Her expression was a mixture of pride and excitement. I don't know what to say. Corey stammered. That sounds amazing. Mr. Carter chuckled. You don't have to decide right now. Talk it over with your mom, and let me know. Here's the address and my number. He handed Corey another business card. Think about it. But I'll tell you this. Opportunities like this don't come around often. Corey nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he took the card. Thank you. I'll think about it. After Mr. Carter left, Corey and his mom sat in the living room, the business card resting on the coffee table between them. What do you think, Mom? Corey asked, his voice uncertain. His mom smiled, her eyes glistening. I think your dad would be over the moon about this. It's a chance to do what you love, Corey. And it's a chance to build a future for yourself. The following Monday, Corey walked into Mr. Carter's repair shop for the first time. The smell of oil and grease filled the air, and the sound of tools clinking against metal echoed through the space. It was intimidating, but also thrilling. Mr. Carter introduced Corey to the team, a group of seasoned mechanics who welcomed him warmly. Corey started with small tasks, organizing tools, cleaning up workspaces, and observing the mechanics as they worked. But it wasn't long before one of the mechanics, a kind man named Luis, began showing Corey the ropes. Corey learned how to change oil, replace spark plugs, and even troubleshoot engine issues. Each day brought new challenges, but Corey embraced them with determination. Weeks turned into months, and Corey's skills grew. He balanced school and work as best as he could, often staying up late to finish homework after a long shift at the shop. His mom worried about him burning out, but Corey reassured her that he could handle it. One day, as Corey was working on a particularly tricky repair, Mr. Carter approached him. Corey, can I have a word? Corey set down his wrench and wiped his hands. Sure. What's up? Mr. Carter led him to the office and gestured for him to sit. I've been watching you these past few months, and I'm impressed. You've got talent, and you're not afraid of hard work. That's a rare combination. How would you feel about taking on more responsibilities here? Maybe working on bigger projects? Corey's heart raced. I'd love that. Thank you for believing in me. Mr. Carter smiled. You've earned it. Keep it up. Corey, you have a bright future ahead of you. As Corey walked back into the shop, his mind buzzed with excitement. He knew there was still so much to learn, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path, and he couldn't wait to see where it would take him.